Millionaire finds injured woman on roadside shocked to learn who she is. Ryan Carter wasn't supposed to be driving himself tonight. At 36, as the CEO of Carter Industries, a multi-million-dollar investment firm, he had a full-time driver who handled these things. But James had called in sick at the last minute, and Ryan's late meeting had left him no choice but to get behind the wheel himself. It had been years since he'd driven alone like this, years since he'd had the solitude of a quiet road and his own thoughts. He'd forgotten what it felt like. The isolation, the stillness. He was tired, bone-deep tired. The kind of exhaustion that came not from physical labor, but from years of carrying the weight of expectations, of proving himself worthy of the empire his father had nearly destroyed before dying and leaving it in Ryan's reluctant hands. Tonight's meeting had been just another in an endless series of negotiations, acquisitions, and strategic maneuvers that defined his life. Successful? Yes. Fulfilling? That was another question entirely. Ryan's headlights cut through the darkness as he navigated the winding highway that led back into the city. He was maybe 15 miles from home, already thinking about the scotch he'd pour himself, the silence of his penthouse, the few hours of sleep he'd get before starting the whole cycle again tomorrow. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy, charged with the aftermath of the storm. Fog was beginning to creep across the road in thin wisps, making visibility challenging. That's when he saw it. At first, it looked like debris, a dark shape on the shoulder of the road, maybe a fallen branch or a piece of metal from a truck's cargo. Ryan almost didn't slow down, almost kept driving. But something made him ease off the accelerator, some instinct he couldn't name. As his headlights swept across the shape, his heart lurched violently in his chest. It wasn't debris. It was a person. A woman, lying on the wet ground near the guardrail, her body crumpled at an unnatural angle, one arm reaching weakly toward the road, as if trying to signal for help. Her clothes were torn and muddy, her hair plastered to her face, and even from this distance, Ryan could see she was injured. He slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the wet pavement before coming to a stop. Without thinking, without hesitation, Ryan threw the car into park and burst out of the driver's seat, leaving the door open, the headlights still illuminating the scene. He ran to her, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles, his suit jacket immediately soaked by the residual dampness in the air. "Miss? Can you hear me?" Ryan dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body, unsure where to touch, afraid of making her injuries worse. Up close, he could see the extent of the damage. Her face was bruised, a nasty cut above her left eyebrow still bleeding sluggishly. Her clothes were ripped, her jacket torn at the shoulder, her jeans muddy and scraped. There were scratches on her hands, defensive wounds that suggested she'd fought back against someone or something. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and her skin was pale, almost gray in the harsh glare of the headlights. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, and filled with pain. She tried to speak, her lips moving, but only a whisper came out. Ryan leaned closer, his ear near her mouth. "Please," she breathed, the word barely audible. "My bag. Someone took it." Then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. Panic surged through Ryan. He'd never been good in emergencies, always preferring the controlled environment of boardrooms and negotiations. But there was no time for hesitation. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers, giving the dispatcher their location and a rapid description of the woman's condition. Critical, unconscious, possible assault. Send an ambulance immediately. But even as he gave the information, Ryan knew the ambulance would take too long. They were miles from the nearest hospital, and this woman didn't have time. He made a decision, carefully, trying to remember everything he'd ever seen in medical dramas about moving injured people. Ryan slid his arms beneath her body. She was lighter than he expected, her frame small and fragile in his arms. He lifted her as gently as he could, cradling her against his chest, and carried her to his car. He positioned her carefully in the back seat, adjusting her so her head was elevated, making sure her airway was clear. Then he got back behind the wheel and drove faster than he'd ever driven in his life. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because Ryan and Elena's story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. The hospital emergency room entrance was lit up like a beacon when Ryan screeched to a stop outside. He ran around to the back door, lifting the woman out again, and carried her through the automatic doors, shouting for help before he'd even fully entered. Medical staff appeared immediately, surrounding them, asking rapid-fire questions. What happened? How long has she been unconscious? Any known medical conditions? Ryan answered what he could find on roadside. Unconscious, possible assault, didn't know anything else, and then they were taking her from his arms, placing her on a gurney, wheeling her away behind the swinging doors marked "Emergency Personnel Only." And Ryan was left standing alone in the bright, sterile lobby, his suit soaked and muddy, his hands trembling from adrenaline, wondering what the hell had just happened. Ryan should have left, should have given his statement to the hospital staff, confirmed that he wasn't family and didn't know the woman, and gone home to his quiet penthouse and his waiting scotch. But he couldn't make himself walk away. Something kept him rooted there in that uncomfortable plastic chair in the waiting area, his expensive suit slowly drying in the harsh fluorescent light, his mind racing. Who was she? What had happened to her? Was she going to be okay? And why did something about her face feel hauntingly familiar? He'd only glimpsed her features for a moment before she'd lost consciousness, and they'd been distorted by pain and injury. But there was something in the shape of her face, the curve of her cheekbone, the set of her mouth that tugged at his memory like a song he couldn't quite place. A nurse approached him after about 20 minutes. "Sir, are you the one who brought in the Jane Doe?" Ryan stood. "Yes. How is she?" "She's stable. The doctor is examining her now. Can I ask your relationship to the patient?" "I don't know her," Ryan admitted. "I found her on the side of the highway. She was unconscious. I didn't know what else to do." The nurse's expression softened. "You did the right thing. She's lucky you found her when you did." She paused. "Did she say anything before she lost consciousness? Any indication of what happened?" "She said something about her bag being taken. That someone took it." The nurse made a note. "We've contacted the police. They'll want to speak with you." Ryan nodded, settling back into the chair. The police arrived about 30 minutes later, two officers who took his statement with professional efficiency. He told them everything he knew, which wasn't much. Found her on Highway 47, approximately mile marker 32, around 11:15 at night. Unconscious, injured, appeared to have been assaulted or robbed. No personal effects found with her. After the police left, Ryan continued to wait. He told himself he was just making sure she was okay, that it was the responsible thing to do. But the truth was, he couldn't shake the feeling that he knew her from somewhere. It was nearly 2 in the morning when a doctor finally emerged, looking tired but not grim. Ryan stood immediately. "Are you here for the Jane Doe from the highway?" the doctor asked. "Yes. How is she?" She's stable. Multiple contusions, some deep bruising, a mild concussion. She'll be sore for a while, but there's no permanent damage. She's very lucky." Relief washed through Ryan. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "Are you family?" No. I'm the one who found her. She's asleep right now. We've given her something for the pain, but I suppose a brief visit wouldn't hurt. She should know she has someone looking out for her." The doctor led Ryan through the emergency department to a small private room. The woman was lying in the bed, covered in a white hospital blanket, her face cleaned of blood and dirt now. An oxygen cannula rested beneath her nose, an IV line ran into her left arm, and monitors beeped softly beside the bed. Ryan stepped inside, moving quietly so as not to disturb her. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, finally getting a clear look at her face. And his world stopped. Even with the bruising, even with the swelling around her left eye and the bandage above her eyebrow, he knew that face, knew it better than he knew his own. Knew it in a way that transcended time and distance and all the years that had passed since he'd last seen it. Elena Brooks. The woman he had loved more than he'd thought it was possible to love anyone. The woman who had left him 5 years ago without a word, without an explanation, disappearing from his life as completely as if she'd never existed. The woman he'd spent months searching for before finally accepting that she didn't want to be found. the woman whose absence had carved out a hollow place in his chest that had never quite healed. Ryan's hands gripped the arms of the chair as the shock rolled through him in waves. Of all the people on all the roads in all the world, he'd found her, broken and hurt and lying unconscious on the highway like some cruel twist of fate. His Eleanor. Except she wasn't his anymore, hadn't been for 5 years. And looking at her now, at the life clearly etched in the lines around her eyes, the weariness in her features even in sleep, Ryan realized he didn't know this woman at all, didn't know where she'd been, what she'd done, who she'd become, in all the time since she'd walked out of his life. He sat there for a long time, just watching her breathe, his mind spinning through memories he'd worked so hard to bury. Meeting her in college, back when he was just another ambitious business student, and she was the kind-hearted volunteer at the campus health center. The way she'd laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she'd believed in him before he'd believed in himself, the way she'd made him feel like he was more than just his father's son, more than just a legacy to uphold. The way she'd looked at him the last time he'd seen her, her eyes filled with a sadness he hadn't understood then but understood perfectly now. The way she'd said his name, Ryan, like it hurt her to say it. And then she was gone, and he'd been left with nothing but questions and the devastating realization that he'd lost the best thing in his life. Ryan didn't realize he'd reached out until his fingers were touching her hand, the one lying on top of the blanket. Her skin was cold, and he wrapped his hand around hers carefully, trying to warm it. "Elena," he whispered, the name feeling strange on his tongue after years of trying not to say it. "What happened to you?" She didn't answer, of course, just kept sleeping, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm that was the most beautiful thing Ryan had seen in years. He should leave, should walk away before she woke up and saw him here. She'd left for a reason, after all, had chosen to disappear rather than stay with him. Seeing him here would probably be the last thing she wanted. But Ryan couldn't make himself let go of her hand, couldn't make himself stand up and walk away. Because despite everything, despite the years and the hurt and the unanswered questions, seeing her here, alive, breathing, filled him with a relief so profound it bordered on pain. He'd found her. After all this time, fate or chance or whatever cosmic force governed the universe had put her in his path again. And this time, he wasn't going to let her disappear without answers. A nurse came in around 3 in the morning to check Elena's vitals. She gave Ryan a sympathetic smile, clearly assuming he was a concerned boyfriend or husband keeping vigil. He didn't correct her. "She's doing well," the nurse said softly. "Should wake up in a few hours. You should get some rest yourself." "I'm fine," Ryan said, not taking his eyes off Elena's face. The nurse left, and Ryan stayed, watching, waiting, holding the hand of the woman who'd haunted him for 5 years, wondering what he'd say when she finally opened her eyes and saw him sitting there. As dawn began to creep through the hospital room window, painting the sterile walls in shades of gray and pink, Elena stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, her fingers twitched in Ryan's hand, and her breathing pattern changed. Ryan sat forward, his heart hammering in his chest. "Elena," he said softly. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, blinking against the light. She turned her head slightly toward his voice, and Ryan watched as consciousness returned, as her mind caught up with her body. And then her eyes found his face. For a long moment, she just stared at him, her expression cycling through confusion, recognition, disbelief, and something that looked almost like fear. Her lips parted, and she tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. Ryan reached for the water cup on the bedside table, holding the straw to her lips. "Drink," he said gently. She took a few sips, never taking her eyes off his face, as if she thought he might disappear if she looked away. "Ryan?" she finally managed, his name coming out as barely more than a whisper. The sound of her saying his name after all these years hit him harder than he'd expected. "Yeah, it's me. I don't understand. How are you here? Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. I found you last night on the highway. You were hurt." "Oh." Elena's free hand went to her head, touching the bandage there with tentative fingers. "I don't remember much. Just the rain, and then someone grabbed me and—" She broke off, her eyes widening as memory apparently came flooding back. Her breathing quickened, panic flickering across her features. Hey, it's okay, Ryan said quickly, squeezing her hand. You're safe now. You're in the hospital. Whoever hurt you is gone. Elena closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. My bag. They took my bag. All my money, my ID, everything. The police know. They're investigating. She opened her eyes again, looking at him with an expression so lost and vulnerable that it made Ryan's chest ache. Why are you here, Ryan? It was a fair question, one he'd been asking himself since the moment he recognized her. I'm the one who found you, he said simply. I couldn't just leave you, but you didn't know it was me. You stayed because someone needed help, Ryan finished. And then I saw your face, and I realized who you were. Elena's tears came faster now, and she turned her head away from him. This isn't how I wanted you to find me. After all this time, this isn't. I'm sorry. Don't, Ryan said, his voice rougher than he intended. Don't apologize for being hurt. Don't apologize for needing help. I should apologize for a lot of things, Elena said quietly, still not looking at him. Ryan wanted to agree, wanted to demand answers, wanted to ask all the questions that had been burning in him for 5 years. But looking at her lying there, bruised and broken, he pushed all of that aside. Later, he said. We can talk about everything later. Right now you need to rest. You should go, Elena said, finally turning back to face him. I'm sure you have important things to do. You don't need to stay here with me. I'm staying. Ryan. I said I'm staying, Elena. There was steel in his voice, the tone he used in boardrooms when he wasn't going to be argued with. Elena stared at him for a long moment, and Ryan stared back, neither of them willing to look away first. Finally, Elena's expression softened just slightly. You're still as stubborn as ever. And you're still trying to push people away when you need them most, Ryan countered. A ghost of a smile flickered across Elena's face. There and gone so quickly Ryan almost missed it. Some things don't change. No, Ryan agreed quietly. They don't. The morning shift nurse came in then, bright and efficient, breaking the moment. She checked Elena's vitals, asked her pain level, and adjusted her IV. Ryan used the interruption to text his assistant, cancelling all his meetings for the day. He'd deal with the fallout later. After the nurse left, Elena spoke again. I was going to see my mother. She's sick. Lives in Maplewood. I was driving there when my car broke down on the highway. Ryan knew Maplewood, a small town about 3 hours from the city. Your mother's sick? Cancer, Elena said, her voice flat. Stage 3. She's getting treatment, but it's not going well. I'm sorry. Elena nodded, staring at her hands. A man stopped, offered to help with the car. I thought he was being kind. I let my guard down. She didn't need to say more. Ryan could fill in the rest. The man had attacked her, taken her bag, left her on the side of the road. And if Ryan hadn't come along when he didn't let himself finish that thought. Where have you been, Elena? The question came out before Ryan could stop it. 5 years. You disappeared without a word. I looked everywhere for you. Elena's eyes filled with tears again. I know. I'm sorry. I had to leave. Why? She was quiet for so long Ryan didn't think she was going to answer. Then, finally, in a voice so soft he had to lean in to hear it. Because you were drowning, Ryan, and I was drowning with you, and I didn't know how to save either of us. The words hit him like a physical blow, because they were true. 5 years ago, after his father died and left the company in shambles, Ryan had been drowning, consumed by the desperate need to prove himself, to save his father's legacy, to be worthy of the empire that had been thrust into his unwilling hands. He'd worked 18-hour days, stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped seeing anyone or doing anything that didn't directly contribute to saving Carter Industries. And Elena had tried to help, had tried to be there for him, but he'd pushed her away, shut her out, treated her like she was just another obligation he didn't have time for. Until one day, she'd stopped trying, and then she was gone. You could have talked to me, Ryan said, but there was no heat in the words, just a weary sadness. I tried, Elena said. You weren't there anymore. The man I loved had disappeared into board meetings and corporate acquisitions, and I couldn't compete with that. It wasn't a competition, wasn't it? Elena met his eyes. Be honest, Ryan. If I told you I needed you to choose between me and the company, what would you have chosen? Ryan wanted to say he would have chosen her, wanted to believe it, but he couldn't because he knew the truth. 5 years ago, he would have chosen the company, would have told himself it was temporary, that once he got things under control he'd make it up to her, would have convinced himself that providing for their future was more important than being present in their present. He'd been a fool. I would have chosen wrong, Ryan admitted quietly. Elena nodded, as if she'd expected that answer. I know, that's why I left. I thought if I stayed, I'd just become bitter and resentful, and I didn't want to hate you, Ryan, so I left before I could. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of years and regret and all the things they'd never said hanging between them. Where did you go? Ryan asked finally. Maplewood, actually, where my mom lives. I got a job at the community health clinic. Started over. Were you happy? Elena considered the question. I was surviving. I was useful. I was helping people. Happy? I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes. Did you ever think about coming back? Every day, Elena said softly. But I didn't know if you'd want to see me, and I was afraid that even if you did, we'd just fall into the same patterns, that nothing would have changed. Ryan wanted to tell her everything had changed, that he wasn't the same man he'd been 5 years ago, that he'd learned from his mistakes, grown, become someone better. But he wasn't sure that was true. Yes, he'd saved the company. Carter Industries was more successful now than it had ever been under his father's leadership. But Ryan's personal life? Still empty, still isolated, still built around work and success and achievement with nothing else to balance it. Maybe he hadn't changed at all. I should let you rest, Ryan said, standing up. The doctor said you need to sleep. You're leaving? Elena asked. And was that disappointment in her voice? Just for a few hours. I need to go home, change, take care of some things. But I'll be back. You don't have to come back, Ryan. I'll be okay. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, this woman who had once meant everything to him, bruised, exhausted, alone. No family here, her mother sick and 3 hours away, her bag stolen so she probably didn't even have money for a phone call. I'm coming back, he said firmly, whether you want me to or not. This time, Elena didn't argue. She just nodded, her eyes already starting to close as the pain medication pulled her back towards sleep. Ryan watched her for a moment longer, memorizing her face all over again. Then he turned and walked out of the room, his mind already spinning with everything he needed to do. Find out more about the attack. Make sure the police were actually investigating. Figure out what Elena needed and how he could help without overstepping. Call the hospital in Maplewood and check on her mother's condition. And somehow navigate this impossible situation of having the woman he'd never stopped loving back in his life, even if it was only temporary, even if she still planned to leave again as soon as she was healed. As Ryan walked through the hospital parking lot toward his car, the morning sun finally breaking through the clouds, he made himself a promise. He didn't know what was going to happen with Elena, didn't know if they had any kind of future together or if this was just fate giving them a chance to get closure on their past. But this time, he wasn't going to let her disappear without fighting for her. This time, he was going to be the man she'd needed him to be 5 years ago, even if it was too late to matter. If you're already invested in Ryan and Elena's second chance, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next. Do you think they can overcome their past? Or is some hurt too deep to heal? Ryan didn't go home. He told himself he would, told himself he needed to shower and change and deal with the mountain of work that was undoubtedly piling up. But instead, he found himself sitting in his car in the hospital parking lot, staring at his phone, trying to figure out where to even begin. Finally, he called his assistant, Jennifer, who answered on the second ring despite it being barely 7 in the morning. Mr. Carter, is everything all right? You missed the 7 o'clock conference call. I need you to clear my schedule for today, Ryan said, and possibly tomorrow. Something's come up. There was a pause. Jennifer had worked for Ryan for 6 years and had never once heard him cancel meetings without a detailed explanation and contingency plan. Of course. Should I reschedule or postpone indefinitely? Reschedule what you can. The rest can wait. Ryan pinched the bridge of his nose. "And Jennifer, I need you to do something else for me. Discreetly." "Of course. Contact Maplewood General Hospital. Find out about a patient named." Ryan realized he didn't know Elena's mother's name, didn't know if she'd remarried, if she still went by Brooks. He knew so little about Elena's life now. "Find out about cancer patients currently receiving treatment. The patient's daughter is Elena Brooks. I need to know the mother's condition and what she needs." "Understood. Anything else?" "Contact our legal team. I need them to look into an assault case from last night. Highway 47, around mile marker 32. The victim's personal belongings were stolen. I want to know everything the police know. I'll have that information for you within the hour." "Thank you, Jennifer." After hanging up, Ryan sat in the silence of his car, watching the hospital entrance. Early morning shift workers were arriving, doctors and nurses in scrubs, administrative staff with coffee cups and tired faces. Life going on like normal while his world had been completely upended. He should feel angry, he thought. Elena had left him without explanation, had let him believe she just didn't care anymore, had let him search for her for months while she was living 3 hours away. Starting a new life like their years together had meant nothing. But looking at her in that hospital bed, bruised and broken and so heartbreakingly vulnerable, Ryan couldn't find anger, just a deep, aching sadness for everything they'd lost. And something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. His phone rang. Jennifer, efficient as always. "Mr. Carter, I have the information you requested. The patient at Maplewood General is Diane Brooks, age 62, currently undergoing treatment for stage 3 breast cancer. Prognosis is guarded. She's scheduled for another round of chemotherapy next week." "Thank you. Can you arrange for the best oncologist in the state to consult on her case? I'll cover all costs." "Of course. And sir, the legal team is already reaching out to the police department. They'll have a full report by this afternoon." Ryan ended the call and finally allowed himself to head home. His penthouse was exactly as he'd left it the night before. Immaculate, expensive, empty. He'd lived here for 3 years, and it still felt more like a hotel than a home. No photos on the walls, no personal touches, nothing that indicated an actual human lived here. He showered quickly, the hot water washing away the physical evidence of the night, but doing nothing for the turmoil in his mind. As he dressed in fresh clothes, casual this time since he wasn't going to the office, Ryan found himself standing in front of his closet, staring at a box on the top shelf he hadn't opened in 5 years. "Don't," he told himself. "Don't do this to yourself." But his hands were already reaching for it, pulling it down, opening the lid. Inside were the things he'd kept from his relationship with Elena. Nothing dramatic or extensive, just small mementos he hadn't been able to throw away. A ticket stub from the first movie they'd seen together. A photo strip from a booth at a carnival, the two of them laughing, her head on his shoulder. A birthday card she'd given him, the inside filled with her handwriting telling him how proud she was of him, how much she believed in him. At the bottom of the box was a small velvet ring box. Ryan picked it up, opened it, and stared at the engagement ring he'd bought 6 years ago. The ring he'd been planning to give Elena the weekend after his father died. The ring that was still sitting in this box because his entire world had imploded, and by the time he'd come up for air, Elena was gone. He snapped the box shut and put it back, shoving the whole container back onto the shelf. What was he doing? Elena had made her choice 5 years ago. She'd left. And yes, he'd found her again. But that didn't mean anything had changed. She'd made it clear this morning that she'd left because staying was destroying her. Why would she want to try again? Still, as Ryan grabbed his keys and headed back to the hospital, he couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd said his name, the way her hand had felt in his, the way, just for a moment, he'd seen something in her eyes that looked like the girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. When Ryan returned to Elena's hospital room, she was awake, sitting up in bed, picking at a breakfast tray that looked completely unappetizing. She looked up when he entered, surprise flickering across her face. "You came back. I said I would." Ryan pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Elena said with a weak smile. "But the doctor says I can probably go home tomorrow if everything looks good." Home to Maplewood? Elena nodded. I need to check on my mom. She was expecting me yesterday. She's probably worried sick. I had my assistant contact the hospital. Your mother is stable, and I've arranged for a specialist to consult on her case. Elena's eyes widened. Ryan, you can't. It's done, Ryan said firmly. And before you argue, this isn't about us. This is about making sure your mother gets the best possible care. I can't afford a specialist. You're not paying for it. I am. Elena set down her fork, her expression torn between gratitude and frustration. I can't let you do that. And why not? Because it's too much. Because I don't want to owe you. Because... She stopped, taking a shaky breath. Because I don't know what it means if you start doing things like this. Ryan leaned forward. It means I care about you, Elena. Past, present, whatever we are or aren't to each other now, I care. And I'm not going to sit here and watch your mother suffer when I have the resources to help. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, Elena said quietly. What? You, swooping in with your money and your resources, fixing everything. It's what you do, Ryan. You solve problems. You control situations. But some things can't be fixed with money. The words stung because they were partially true. Ryan had built his entire adult life around the idea that any problem could be solved with enough capital, strategy, and determination. I'm not trying to control you, Ryan said. I'm trying to help. I know. But don't you see? This is exactly what happened before. You thought providing was the same as being present. You thought success and security meant more than actually being there. That's not fair. Isn't it? Elena met his eyes. Ryan, I loved you. God, I loved you so much it hurt. But I couldn't be with someone who was never actually there. And now you're doing it again, throwing money at problems instead of... She stopped, shaking her head. Instead of what? Ryan asked. Instead of just being here. Just being you. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Ryan. The words hung between them, and Ryan felt something crack open in his chest, because she was right. Even now, even after 5 years, his first instinct was to fix things with resources and connections. He'd arranged for the specialist before even asking Elena if that's what she wanted, had mobilized his legal team without considering that maybe she just needed him to sit with her and listen. I don't know how to be just Ryan anymore, he admitted quietly. I haven't been just Ryan in a long time. Elena's expression softened. I know, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said all that. You're trying to help, and I'm being ungrateful. No, Ryan said. You're being honest, and you're right. I do try to control things. It's the only way I know how to cope. They sat in silence for a moment, the tension easing slightly. Can I ask you something? Elena said finally. Anything. Did you ever find someone else? After I left? The question surprised Ryan. No. There were a few attempts at relationships, but nothing that stuck. What about you? Elena shook her head. I tried once. A doctor at the clinic. He was kind, stable, everything I thought I should want, but it didn't work out. Why not? Because he wasn't you. The admission hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning and possibility, and all the complicated history they shared. Before Ryan could respond, there was a knock at the door. A police officer entered, middle-aged with kind eyes and a worn notebook. Miss Brooks? I'm Detective Martinez. I'm investigating your assault. Do you feel up to answering some questions? Elena nodded, and Ryan started to stand, giving her privacy. But Elena reached out and grabbed his hand. Stay, please. So Ryan stayed, holding Elena's hand while she recounted what had happened. Her car had broken down around 10:30 at night. A man in a truck had stopped, offered to help. She'd been grateful, relieved even. But when she'd opened her hood, he'd grabbed her from behind, demanding her purse. She'd fought back, which was how she'd gotten so injured. He'd taken her bag and driven off, leaving her on the side of the road. Can you describe him? Detective Martinez asked. Elena provided what details she could remember. Medium height, heavy set, wearing a baseball cap. It wasn't much to go on. After the detective left, promising to do everything he could to find the man, Elena looked exhausted. You should rest, Ryan said. I'm tired of resting. I feel like all I've done is sleep. Your body is healing. That takes energy. Elena studied him for a long moment. Why are you really here, Ryan? And don't say it's just to help. There's something else. Ryan considered lying, brushing off the question. But Elena had asked for honesty, and he owed her that. Because for 5 years, I've wondered what happened to you, where you went, if you were okay, if you ever thought about me. He paused. And because seeing you again made me realize that I never really moved on. I just buried everything and pretended I had. Ryan, I'm not asking for anything, Ryan said quickly. I'm not expecting you to feel the same way or want to try again. I just needed you to know that finding you last night, as terrible as the circumstances were, felt like getting a second chance I didn't think I'd ever have. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I thought about you every day, every single day. I wondered if leaving was the biggest mistake of my life. But I was so hurt, and I didn't know how to come back. You don't have to come back, Ryan said, but maybe we could start over. Not as who we were, but as who we are now. So, I don't know if I can do that, Elena whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough to risk my heart again. Then don't risk it, Ryan said. Not yet. Just let me be here. Let me help you get better. Let me make sure you get to your mother safely. No expectations, no pressure. Just two old friends helping each other. Elena searched his face, looking for something. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay. Friends. It wasn't what Ryan wanted, but it was a start. Over the next 24 hours, Ryan stayed close. He brought Elena real food from a restaurant nearby since hospital food was terrible. He sat with her through the tedious hours of waiting for test results and doctor consultations. He made sure she had everything she needed, from extra pillows to books to pass the time. And slowly, they started talking. Really talking. Not about the past or their relationship, but about their lives now. Elena told him about her work at the clinic, about the patients she'd helped, the small community in Maplewood that had welcomed her. Ryan told her about turning the company around, about the successes and the sacrifices, about the loneliness that came with the territory. They laughed about shared memories from college, remembered professors they'd loved and hated, recalled inside jokes that still made them smile after all these years. It felt comfortable, safe, like coming home after a long journey. The morning Elena was set to be discharged, Ryan arrived to find her dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed, a frustrated expression on her face. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I don't have a car. Mine's still broken down on the highway somewhere. I don't have money for a bus ticket since they took my wallet. I can't even call anyone because they took my phone." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I have no idea how I'm getting to Maplewood." "I'll take you," Ryan said immediately. "Ryan, that's 3 hours away." "I know. I looked it up. You can't just drop everything and drive me 3 hours." "Why not?" "Because you have a company to run. You have responsibilities. And I have plenty of people who can handle things for a day," Ryan said. "Elena, please, let me do this. Let me make sure you get to your mother safely." Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion and practicality won out. "Okay, thank you." The drive to Maplewood was quiet at first, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Ryan's car was comfortable, the kind of luxury Elena had probably forgotten existed. She stared out the window at the passing landscape, her fingers unconsciously touching the bruise on her face. "Does it hurt?" Ryan asked. "Not as much as yesterday. The pain medication helps." They drove in silence for another 20 minutes before Elena spoke again. "I'm scared to see my mom like this. The last time I visited, she'd lost so much weight, and her hair is gone from the chemo. She tries to be strong for me, but I can see how much she's suffering." "I'm sorry," Ryan said, not knowing what else to offer. "She liked you, you know. Back when we were together, she always said you were going to do great things. Did you tell her we broke up?" Elena shook her head. "I told her we grew apart, that it was mutual and amicable. I didn't want her to worry about me." "Does she know about last night?" "All right. Not yet. I'll have to tell her something, but I don't want to scare her." They stopped for lunch at a small diner halfway to Maplewood. It was the kind of place with red vinyl booths and laminated menus and coffee that was surprisingly good. Elena ordered a grilled cheese sandwich, and Ryan got a burger, and they sat across from each other like any normal couple having a meal. Except they weren't a couple. They were two people with a complicated past, trying to figure out what, if anything, they meant to each other now. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said as they ate. "Sure. Do you regret it? Leaving, I mean. Not the reason you left, but the way you did it. No note, no explanation, just gone." Elena was quiet for a long time. "Yes and no. I regret hurting you, but I don't regret leaving. I was drowning, Ryan. Every day I stayed, I felt like I was losing more of myself. I had to go. I understand that now. I didn't then, but I do now. What would you have done if I'd told you I was leaving?" Ryan considered the question honestly. 5 years ago, I probably would have tried to convince you to stay, promised to do better, to make more time. And then I would have broken those promises because I didn't know how to be anything other than what I was. And now? Now I'd ask you what you needed, and I'd actually listen to the answer. Elena smiled sadly. That's growth. Too little, too late. Maybe, maybe not. They finished their meal and got back on the road. As they got closer to Maplewood, Elena grew more anxious, her fingers twisting in her lap. "Hey," Ryan said gently, "she's going to be okay, and so are you. How do you know?" "Because you're one of the strongest people I've ever met, and because you're not alone in this anymore." Elena turned to look at him, something vulnerable and hopeful in her expression. "Aren't I? Not if you don't want to be." Oh, when they finally pulled up to the small house where Elena's mother lived, a modest ranch-style home with a neat garden and a front porch, Elena took a deep breath. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Ryan asked. "Would you?" "Of course." Elena's mother, Diane, answered the door, looking frail but alert. Her eyes widened when she saw Elena's bruised face, then widened further when she saw Ryan standing behind her. "Elena, oh my God, what happened? And Ryan? Is that really you?" What followed was a tearful reunion, Elena assuring her mother she was fine while Diane fussed over her injuries and ushered them both inside. The house was small but cozy, filled with the kind of warmth that came from actually being lived in and loved. Diane made tea, insisting they sit down and tell her everything. Elena gave an edited version of the attack, downplaying the severity, and explained that Ryan had found her and brought her here. "You always were a good man," Diane said to Ryan, patting his hand. "I'm so glad you were there when Elena needed you." Over tea and cookies that Diane had apparently made despite being in the middle of cancer treatment, Ryan watched Elena with her mother. The way she carefully poured the tea, knowing exactly how her mother liked it. The way she laughed at her mother's stories, some of which Ryan remembered from years ago. The way she looked more at peace here than he'd seen her since she'd woken up in the hospital. This was Elena's life now. Simple, quiet, far from the world of corporate towers and million-dollar deals. And watching her in it, Ryan realized something that hit him like a physical blow. She was happier here than she'd ever been with him. After an hour, Diane started looking tired, and Elena gently suggested she rest. Once her mother had gone to lie down, Elena and Ryan found themselves alone in the small living room. "Your mom looks good," Ryan said. "Considering. She's a fighter, always has been." Elena sat down on the worn couch, and Ryan sat beside her. "Thank you for bringing me here, and for everything else. I don't know how I would have managed without you. You would have found a way. You always do." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Elena spoke again. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "With us. You're going to go back to the city, back to your life, and I'm going to stay here and take care of my mom. So what happens?" Haha. Ryan turned to face her fully. "That depends on what you want." "I don't know what I want," Elena admitted. "Part of me wants to pretend the last 5 years didn't happen, that we can just pick up where we left off. But we can't, can we?" "No," Ryan said honestly. "Too much has changed. We've both changed. And the other part of me is terrified that if I let you back in, we'll just end up in the same place, with you choosing work over me and me resenting you for it." "1. I can't promise that won't happen," Ryan said. "I can't promise I'll always get it right or that I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that this time I'll actually try, that I'll listen when you tell me what you need, that I won't let work consume me to the point where I lose sight of what matters." Elena searched his face, How can you promise that? Because losing you the first time almost destroyed me, and I don't want to go through that again. Ryan, I'm not asking for an answer right now, Ryan said quickly. I'm not asking you to make any decisions or promises. I'm just asking for a chance. Let me prove to you that I've changed, that we could be different this time. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. So am I. What if we try and it doesn't work? Then at least we'll know we tried, and we'll have closure instead of spending the rest of our lives wondering what if. Elena was quiet for a long time, and Ryan let her think, didn't push. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, we can try, but slowly, Ryan. Really slowly. I can't handle getting hurt again. Relief flooded through him. Slowly, I promise. He reached out and took her hand, and this time, when their fingers intertwined, it felt like more than just comfort. It felt like possibility. If you're feeling everything Ryan and Elena are going through right now, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Do you think they can make it work this time? Or are they heading for heartbreak again? Make sure you're subscribed. Ryan stayed in Maplewood for 3 days. He told himself it was to make sure Elena was settled and her mother was comfortable, but the truth was simpler and more complicated than that. He didn't want to leave. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He got a room at the only hotel in town, a modest place that was clean but nothing like the luxury he was accustomed to. Every morning, he'd stop at the local bakery and pick up fresh muffins and coffee, then drive to Elena's mother's house. Diane would be up already, despite her illness, insisting on making breakfast for everyone. Ryan would help Elena in the kitchen, chopping vegetables or setting the table, doing ordinary domestic things he'd never done in his penthouse. They fell into an easy rhythm. After breakfast, while Diane rested, Ryan and Elena would sit on the front porch and talk, sometimes about the past, carefully navigating the painful memories, sometimes about the present, sharing stories from their separate lives, and sometimes about nothing important at all, just the comfortable conversation of two people who knew each other deeply, despite the years apart. On the second day, Elena took Ryan to the community clinic where she worked. It was a small building that had clearly seen better days, with peeling paint and outdated equipment, but it was clean and staffed by people who genuinely cared. This is where I've been for the past 4 years, Elena said, showing him around. We serve mostly uninsured families, people who can't afford regular medical care. Ryan watched her interact with her co-workers, saw the way they lit up when she walked in, the way patients in the waiting room smiled at her. This was where she belonged, he realized. Not in the sterile perfection of his world, but here, making a real difference in people's lives. You love it here, Ryan said, and it wasn't a question. I do. It's not glamorous, and the pay is terrible, but it matters. These people matter. Ryan thought about his own company, about the millions of dollars they moved around, the properties they developed, the investments they managed. It was all important in its own way, but standing here in this small clinic, watching Elena comfort a worried mother with a sick child, Ryan couldn't help but wonder which of them was doing more good in the world. That afternoon, while Elena spent time with her mother, Ryan walked around Maplewood. It was the kind of small town he'd driven through 1,000 times without really seeing. Main Street had a hardware store, a diner, a library, a few local shops. People on the sidewalk nodded hello to strangers. There was a sense of community here that was completely absent from the city. He found himself in a small park, sitting on a bench, watching kids play on a slightly rusty playground while their parents chatted nearby. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Ryan felt something close to peace. His phone rang. Jennifer. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have a situation with the Henderson acquisition. They're threatening to pull out if you don't return for the final negotiations. Ryan sighed. What's the timeline? They want an answer by tomorrow afternoon. Tell them I'll call in for a video conference. I'm not coming back yet. There was a pause. Jennifer had never heard him prioritize anything over a major acquisition. Understood, sir. I'll arrange it. After hanging up, Ryan sat there for a while longer, thinking about the choice he'd just made. 5 years ago, he would have been on the road within the hour, racing back to the city, leaving Elena behind without a second thought because the deal was too important to risk. But he was different now, or at least he wanted to be. That evening, after dinner, Diane excused herself early, giving Ryan and Elena a knowing look that made Elena blush. They ended up back on the front porch, sitting on the old swing that creaked gently as they rocked. "Your mom not exactly subtle," Ryan said with a smile. "She never has been. She's been hoping we'd get back together since the moment she saw you at the door." "And what do you hope?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the darkening street. "I hope we don't make the same mistakes. I hope that if we try this, it's because we've both actually changed, not just because being together feels familiar and comfortable." "Have you changed?" Ryan asked. "I think so. I'm more independent now. I know I can survive on my own. I don't need someone to complete me or save me. But I also know that letting people in doesn't make me weak. It took me a long time to learn that." "I've changed too," Ryan said. "Losing you forced me to look at my life, at my priorities. I realized I'd built this empire, but I had no one to share it with. Success felt empty without you." "But did you actually change your behavior, or did you just feel bad about it?" The question was pointed but fair. Ryan thought about it carefully. "Honestly, for the first year after you left, I just worked more. Threw myself even deeper into the company. Told myself that's what I needed to do. But then I hit a wall. I was successful by every measure, but I was miserable. So I started delegating more, hired people I could trust, created systems that didn't require me to be involved in every decision." He turned to look at her. "I started going to therapy, dealt with some issues I'd been avoiding since my father died. Learned that my need to control everything came from fear. Fear of failing, of not being good enough, of losing everything the way my father almost did." Elena's expression softened. "You went to therapy for 2 years. Still go sometimes when I need it. I'm proud of you. That takes courage." "As I had a good reason. My therapist asked me once what I was working so hard for, what the end goal was, and I realized I didn't have an answer. I'd been so focused on proving myself, on being successful, that I'd forgotten to actually build a life worth living." They swung in silence for a while, the evening air cool and comfortable around them. "I'm scared, Ryan," Elena finally said. "I'm scared of wanting this too much, of letting myself hope and then being disappointed again." Ryan reached over and took her hand. "I'm scared too, but I think the fact that we're both scared means we're taking this seriously. We're not just jumping in blindly like we did when we were kids." "How?" "We weren't kids. We were in our 20s. Same difference. We thought love was enough. We didn't understand that it takes work and compromise and actual conscious effort to make a relationship work." "And you think we can do that now?" Ryan squeezed her hand. "I think we can try. And I think this time we're both going in with our eyes open. We know it won't be easy. We know we'll have to navigate the distance, the different worlds we live in, all the history between us. But at least we know what we're up against." Elena turned to look at him, and in the dim light from the porch lamp, her eyes were luminous. "I never stopped loving you," she said softly. "Even when I hated you, even when I tried to move on, I never stopped." Ryan's heart felt like it might burst from his chest. "I never stopped loving you either. So what do we do now?" "Now," Ryan said, "we take it one day at a time. We talk honestly. We don't run when things get hard. And we remember that we're on the same team this time." Elena nodded, and then, slowly, she leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and tentative, a question as much as a statement. Ryan kissed her back gently, one hand coming up to cup her face, careful of her fading bruises. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I've missed that," Elena whispered. "So have I." Find advisors proud. They sat on the swing for hours, talking and kissing and making plans. Not grand plans, just small ones. Ryan would return to the city but come back to visit every weekend. Elena would focus on her mother's treatment while keeping her job at the clinic. They'd talk every day, really talk, not just surface-level check-ins. They'd be honest about their needs and fears. They'd go to couples therapy if they needed to. And most importantly, they'd remember that love wasn't enough on its own. It needed to be nurtured, protected, fought for. Ryan ended up staying in Maplewood for a week. He conducted business remotely, much to Jennifer's shock, and spent every spare moment with Elena and her mother. He went to one of Diane's chemo appointments, holding Elena's hand in the waiting room, while they both pretended not to be terrified. He helped Elena grocery shop, cook dinner, do all the mundane tasks that somehow felt profound because they were doing them together. When he finally had to return to the city, it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. "I'll be back Friday," he promised Elena as he stood by his car, ready to leave. "And we'll figure out a more permanent solution soon. Maybe I can work from here a few days a week." "Ryan, you can't run your company from Maplewood. Watch me." Elena laughed, but her eyes were teary. "I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too. But this isn't goodbye. Not anymore." He kissed her, long and deep, not caring that her mother was probably watching from the window. When he finally pulled away and got in his car, Elena stood in the driveway, waving, until he turned the corner and she disappeared from view. The drive back to the city felt longer than it ever had before. His penthouse, when he finally arrived, felt cold and empty. But Ryan didn't let himself wallow. He had work to do, plans to make, a future to build that included the woman he loved. Over the next 3 months, Ryan and Elena rebuilt their relationship from the ground up. True to his word, Ryan drove to Maplewood every Friday evening and stayed until Sunday afternoon. He got to know the town, became a regular at the diner, started recognizing faces at the grocery store. He helped Elena care for her mother, learning how to manage the side effects of chemo, how to be present during the hard days without trying to fix everything. Diane's condition stabilized. The new specialist Ryan had brought in adjusting her treatment plan in ways that made a real difference. Elena came to the city a few times too, staying in Ryan's penthouse, meeting his colleagues, seeing his world through new eyes. She didn't fit there, not really, but she tried, and Ryan appreciated the effort, even as he realized he was the one who needed to make the bigger changes. 6 months after finding Elena on that roadside, Ryan made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He restructured his role at Carter Industries, promoting his COO to co-CEO and transitioning himself into a chairman position that required far less day-to-day involvement. "Are you sure about this?" Jennifer asked when he announced the change. "This company has been your whole life." "That's the problem," Ryan said. "It shouldn't have been. I'm not abandoning ship, just finding a better balance." With his new schedule, Ryan was able to spend 3 days a week in Maplewood. He bought a small house there, nothing ostentatious, just a comfortable place where he and Elena could build a life together. Close enough to her mother's house that they could help easily, but far enough to have their own space. Elena moved in with him on a warm Saturday in September. They spent the day unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, arguing playfully about where things should go. It felt domestic and normal and absolutely perfect. That evening, as they sat on their new back porch watching the sunset, Elena leaned her head on Ryan's shoulder. "I can't believe this is real," she said. "Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone again." "I'm not going anywhere," Ryan promised. "This is home now, your home. What about your company, your life in the city?" "The company will be fine. Better than fine, actually. Turns out I don't need to micromanage every decision. And my life in the city?" He kissed the top of her head. "That wasn't a life. It was just existence. This is living." As autumn turned to winter, Ryan settled into his new normal. He spent Mondays and Tuesdays in the city, handling the aspects of the business that still required his direct involvement. Wednesdays through Sundays, he was in Maplewood with Elena. He volunteered at the clinic, using his business expertise to help them apply for grants and manage their limited budget more effectively. He got to know Elena's patients, her colleagues, her world, and slowly, he became part of the community in a way he'd never been part of anything in the city. Diane's health continued to improve. The cancer went into remission, and while everyone knew it could come back, they celebrated the victory. She cried when Ryan asked her blessing to marry Elena, saying she'd been hoping for this since the day he'd shown up at her door. On a cold December evening, exactly 1 year after he'd found Elena on the roadside, Ryan took her back to that spot on the highway. He'd arranged for the area to be safe, with cones and lights, though he hadn't told Elena why they were stopping there. "Why are we here?" Elena asked as they stood on the shoulder of the road, the same place where he'd first found her broken and hurt. "Because this is where everything changed," Ryan said. "This is where fate gave us a second chance I didn't think we'd ever get." He took both her hands in his. "A year ago, I found you here, and finding you saved me, Elena. Not just you, but me. You reminded me what it means to actually live, instead of just accumulate success. You showed me that some things are worth more than any amount of money or power." Ryan dropped to one knee, and Elena gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "I lost you once because I was too proud and too scared to prioritize what mattered. I won't make that mistake again." He pulled out the ring box he'd kept for 6 years, the one he'd bought before his father died, the one he'd never had a chance to give her. "Elena Brooks, I don't want to go back to who we were. I want to build something new with you, something better. Will you marry me?" Elena was crying, nodding frantically before she could even speak. "Yes," she finally managed to choke out. "Yes, of course, yes." Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all these years for this exact moment. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as cars drove past, as the cold wind whipped around them, as the universe aligned to give them the future they'd almost thrown away. "I love you," Elena whispered against his lips. "I love you so much. I love you too, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." They stood there for a long time, holding each other on the side of the highway where everything had fallen apart and come back together, where an ending had become a beginning. The wedding took place in the spring, in the garden behind the house Ryan and Elena now shared. It was small and intimate, just family and close friends. Diane was there, healthy and radiant, crying tears of joy. Elena's co-workers from the clinic came, as did a few of Ryan's business associates who'd become genuine friends over the years. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. They wrote their own vows, standing under an arch decorated with wildflowers, speaking truths they'd learned the hard way. "Elena," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion, "you taught me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. You showed me that the richest life isn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in moments of connection and love. I promise to never again let work come before us. To be present, not just provide. To choose you, every single day, for the rest of my life." Elena's vows were equally powerful. "Ryan, loving you taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself. You've shown me that people can change, that second chances are real, that the best version of our story isn't the one we planned, but the one we fought to rebuild." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to be honest about what I need, to not run when things get hard, to trust that we're building something strong enough to weather any storm." When they exchanged rings and kissed as husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in applause and cheers. But Ryan and Elena barely heard it. They were lost in each other, in the promise of the future they'd built from the ashes of their past. The reception was held at the community center, with food from the local diner and music from a neighbor who played guitar. It was nothing like the lavish society wedding Ryan could have afforded, but it was perfect because it was theirs. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Ryan pulled Elena close. "Any regrets?" he whispered. "Not a single one. You? Only that it took us so long to get here." "Maybe we needed that time," Elena said. "Maybe we had to lose each other to understand how to really be together. Maybe, but I'm grateful we found our way back." 2 years later, Ryan and Elena stood in front of a crowd at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. They'd used part of Ryan's wealth to completely renovate and expand the Maplewood Community Clinic, turning it into a state-of-the-art facility that still maintained its mission of serving everyone, regardless of ability to pay. The new wing was named after Diane, who stood beside them, still cancer-free, beaming with pride. "This clinic saved me in more ways than one," Elena said in her speech. "It gave me purpose when I felt lost. It showed me that making a difference doesn't require grand gestures, just consistent compassion. And now, thanks to my husband and the foundation we've created together, we can serve even more people who need us." Ryan had established the foundation shortly after their wedding, dedicating a significant portion of his wealth to healthcare initiatives in underserved communities. Elena ran it alongside her clinical work, and together they were making a real impact. But more than the buildings or the programs or the lives they'd helped, what mattered most was what they'd built together. A partnership based on honesty and mutual respect. A love that had been tested and proven strong enough to endure. That evening, as they drove home from the ceremony, Elena reached over and took Ryan's hand. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The night you found me?" "All the time." "Oh, do you think it was fate or just coincidence?" Ryan thought about it. "I think it was a second chance, and what we did with that chance, that was up to us." "And what do you think we did?" "I think we got it right this time." Elena smiled. "So do I." 3 years after the wedding, Elena gave birth to their daughter on a rainy autumn evening, and they named her Hope, because that's what their story had always been about. Hope that broken things could be mended. Hope that love could survive even when it seemed impossible. Hope that second chances were real if you were brave enough to take them. Ryan held his daughter in the hospital room, marveling at her tiny fingers and perfect face, and felt a completeness he'd never known was possible. Elena watched them from the bed, exhausted but radiant, and knew that every difficult moment, every tear, every fear had been worth it to get to this. "She's perfect," Ryan whispered. "She is," Elena agreed. "Just like her daddy. I'm not perfect. No, but you're perfect for us." As the years passed, Ryan and Elena built a life that honored both their worlds. They split their time between Maplewood and the city, raising Hope to understand both the value of hard work and the importance of community. They taught her that success meant different things to different people, and that the truest measure of a life well lived was the positive impact you had on others. The foundation grew, opening clinics in 6 states, providing healthcare to thousands of families who otherwise wouldn't have access. Ryan remained involved with Carter Industries, but never let it consume him. He'd learned the hard way that businesses could be rebuilt, but relationships, once truly broken, might not get a second chance. Elena continued her work as a nurse, eventually becoming the director of the Maplewood Clinic, creating programs and initiatives that became models for other communities. She and Ryan became partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other's dreams while building shared ones. On the 10th anniversary of the night, Ryan found Elena on the roadside. They returned to that spot one more time. This time, they brought Hope, now 7 years old and full of curious questions. "This is where I found your mama," Ryan told her, kneeling down to her level. "She needed help, and I was in the right place at the right time." "Like a superhero?" Hope asked. Ryan smiled. "No, sweetheart. Just a person who stopped when someone needed help. That's something anyone can do." "Your daddy saved me that night," Elena added. "But I saved him too. Sometimes that's how love works. We save each other." As they stood there, the 3 of them, Ryan reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The loss and pain and years of separation, the miraculous reunion, the hard work of rebuilding trust, the commitment to being better, doing better, loving better. Sometimes, life took everything away so it could give you back what really mattered. Sometimes, you had to lose the person you loved to understand how to truly love them. Sometimes, the detours and disasters led you exactly where you needed to be. Ryan had built an empire, accumulated more wealth than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, achieved everything he'd set out to achieve professionally, but none of it compared to this. Standing on a roadside with his wife and daughter, remembering the night that had changed everything. "Ready to go home?" Elena asked, reaching for his hand. Ryan took it, his other hand holding Hope's, and smiled. "I'm already home. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that second chances are real, that broken things can be mended, that it's never too late to make things right with the people we love. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me your favorite moment from Ryan and Elena's journey. Was it when he found her on the roadside? When they reconnected at the hospital? When he changed his entire life to be with her? And if you're new to this channel, welcome to a community that believes love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth rebuilding when it falls apart. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that prove the human heart is capable of incredible resilience and grace. Thank you for watching Ryan and Elena's second chance love story. Thank you for believing that people can change, that love can heal, that the endings we fear sometimes become the beginnings we need. Remember, sometimes the detours in life lead you exactly where you're supposed to be. Sometimes the person you're meant to find isn't waiting at the end of a perfect path. They're lying broken on a roadside, waiting for someone who won't drive by. Be that person. Stop when others keep going. See people when the world makes them invisible, because you never know whose life you're about to change, or whose life might end up changing yours. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep your hearts open to second chances, and remember that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that get a second chapter.